Kristen.
What?
I mean, he's barely even walking, and you're really seriously thinking about this already?
Yes, I am. And for the record, this conversation didn't even transpire because of what just happened during Monday Night Football with Damar Hamlin collapsing on the field and having to get resuscitated. This might have even been conversations prior to my son's birth. And yes, he is only 21 months. He has been walking for a minute. Thank you very much. But I was talking to my husband, Bert, about this, and I thought it would be an interesting discussion on the show, and I would love other parents to weigh in because I have friends who have kids who play certain sports, and then I've had conversations with other parents who are adamantly against certain sports, and the one sport we're talking about is football. So because of the increase of injuries and head injuries and the research that's being done as far as the long-term damage that it can do, those hits one after another, in my core, I'm not even going to say my preference is for my son not to play football. I don't want my son to play football. Mm-hmm. Just from a safety standpoint. And I was reading an article just the other day, which kind of like rejuvenated this conversation in my head, that the signups for youth football have decreased significantly because parents don't want their kids getting hurt.
Well, the game has just changed so much. I know this sounds like a cliche, but these dudes are so big and so fast. And I think while technology is trying to keep up, it is always going to be a violent game, right? So it is a really tough decision for parents to have to make these days, man.
But I mean, can you forbid your kid to do something? So that there lies the dilemma. It's like, can you tell your child, no, you can't pursue this, you can't do this, just because I'm afraid you're going to get hurt?
Hey, Coy.
Hello. Good morning, lovely people.
Hey, man, how are you?
I'm doing all right. It's a heavy day here in Buffalo. I just arrived last night to report on the horrific story about the young man, the 24-year-old Damar Hamlin, who was severely injured in a game, Monday Night Football game, playing the game he loved, and now he's in a hospital in critical condition fighting for his life after suffering some sort of cardiac arrest on the field after a seemingly routine collision against the Cincinnati Bengals. So, as a former Bills player, I played 6 of my NFL years here. It's really tough to talk about, but, I feel like somehow, some way, we're going to become better through hearing this young man's story. Whether it's hearing his inspiration off the field, which was giving back to the youth, which you at the Bert Show know so much about. This is a young man who aimed to raise $2,500 to buy some toys for kids, and now his GoFundMe for that is about $6 million. This shows the outpouring of support of people rallying around that young man while he's fighting for his life in the hospital. So, it's a tough time, not just here in Buffalo, but the NFL community, the sporting world, and all those out there, the moms and dads who have youngsters who play football or any sport who realize, like, my goodness, this is a reminder of how precious life is, right? Mm-hmm. It's the type of story that makes you want to hug those you care about a little tighter when you get home today.
Yeah, and Coy, that's what we were just discussing on the air because, it's conversations my husband Bart and I have had before, and even before our son Jimmy was born, and have reignited with this recent injury to Damar, is like, and I know signups for youth football have declined, is football too dangerous?
If you had a son now, Coy, would you steer him away from football even though you played in the NFL?
I would not, Bert. I have two daughters. They might play in the NFL someday. Yeah. Listen, there's no doubt it's a dangerous sport. And this is a haunting reminder of that yet again. We've seen so many reminders increasingly over the years, and I think that's a good thing because for so long it wasn't taken seriously how dangerous the sport is. You know, I, as a player with a titanium plate and 4 screws in my neck and multiple losses of consciousness, one time getting hit and not remembering or recalling what happened until I watched it on film the next day, I know how scary the sport is. We all know when you play the game. But, you know, now football pales in comparison to this, but there are other walks of life that people choose to put themselves in danger, like the young men and women who serve in our military, and they choose to sacrifice potentially everything for all of us, right? So there are career paths. And again, football pales in comparison to that, but there are career paths where people knowingly assume risks, right? And I think learning about those risks and being reminded of those risks, educating ourselves and our coaches and parents, it's going to continue to make the game safer. I think what happened on Monday night was actually a huge furthering of this paradigm shift that's happening. You had a football game that was stopped in the middle of the game, and in years past, that game would have gone on. I was on the field here in Buffalo when my teammate, we were covering a kick, and he fell paralyzed to the turf. You know, he lied motionless. I watched his body convulse. He was taken off in an ambulance, but then minutes later, whistles were blowing and we were playing again. When I played for Stanford University, my running back, my teammate, he hit a safety for the University of Washington, Curtis Williams, and he fell paralyzed to the turf from the neck down. And, you know, and the game went on. But now, this unprecedented move where these coaches and decision makers looked at the faces of the players who were going to potentially have to play again and said, no, we can't do that. This game is done. That's a huge moment. So they now they're putting players' mental health as the priority. And it may have been said before, but it often rang hollow. But this was a profound moment. I think what happened to DeMar is being referred to as really just like a freak type of injury. They happen, but we do know that there are serious injuries that happen all the time. And the game will continue to evolve through rule changes, through the advancement in technology for equipment. And I think, you know, but justifiably, there will be a lot of parents who say football's too dangerous, and that's okay too. You know, but your question was to me, you know, and I am who I am today because of the game, because it's so unique, unlike so many other sports, and the locker room, the way you develop bonds with people from all walks of life and the lessons it teaches you about life. I think they're invaluable to me. And so this is not the type of thing that makes me feel that this sport needs to go away.
Coy, can you speak to being a former professional and having to see those types of injuries, whether from your teammates or from opponents, and then the mindset that it takes to have to go out there after that and still perform the way you used to?
Yeah. You know, it's about living in the moment. Really, we're trained to have this next snap mentality, next play mentality. Whether you drop a pass or you fumble a ball, or whether you get injured or you see a teammate get injured, you're taught to then snap out of it, get into the present moment, and what's next. And it may seem insensitive. It's not easy, but it's just what has football players really, and I think many pro athletes are trained to do. But I think we're living in this era now where there's this, it's changing. The athletes today are much more cognizant of mental health and, talking about emotions and feelings and not covering up, which I think was really part of the culture for forever until recent years. But yeah, it's not easy. I still, I got emotional when I watched that play on Monday night. I was excited to watch the game as a fan, and then when I saw it happen, like all these emotional scars were kind of reopened and scratched open again because I have flashbacks of seeing some of the things I've seen. And it's one of the things that makes sports unique. It's not for everyone. It's this part of sports is awful, and it's sad, and it's really difficult. But, through it, we hope that, one, DeMar Hamlin can make a full and speedy recovery. He has a world of people pulling for him. And that hopefully then we can also take a step back at some point and learn from this situation. How can the game become safer? How can we become more human as opposed to just some fantasy football fans, right? Or how can we progress as people trying to make the most in this world, right?
Yeah, I think whenever there are tragedies like this is, that it is good to see some positive impact. And I think one thing, it was important for everyone to see the emotion that was on the field from the players, reminding them that they are more than just players, they're human beings.
Yeah, and this was in Cincinnati, and that entire stadium, 70-plus thousand people, they were silent. Mm-hmm. For the 16, 17 minutes that he was on that field lying. They were respectful. They were praying. They were crying, So I think that speaks volumes. We're so often reminded of all the negativity and the negative people in this world. Too often we're reminded of that. It's put in front of our faces too often, right? So when you have moments like that, you remember there are way more good people in this world than not.
No doubt. We got to hold on to that. That's for sure.
And you're one of them. Thank you so much, Coy. I love you, man.
Coy, appreciate your time, man.
Yes, sir.
Love you too. Thank you.
It's Coy Wire from CNN.
The Bert Show.
Like what you just watched, you can get more of The Bert Show on your favorite podcast platform. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find us. I don't know what any of these buttons do, by the way.